Well, hello there. My name is John Meyer. This week I want to address mix bus processing. Mix bus processing is when you add EQ, saturation, compression, limiting, or any kind of other effect to your master channel. As you can see, I have a lot of plugins on here. I have Sonarworks Reference 4 that I have bypassed or inactive, and that's what I use for my headphones to calibrate my headphones to make sure they're as flat as possible. I also use it for my room, although I have to redo it. Long story. I'm inactivating that now because I don't want you to hear these curves. That won't do you any good. I want you to hear this flat so that what you're hearing in your studio is flat. The track I'm going to play for you is unmixed. I've made some basic level adjustments. Here it is. I always start with the loudest part of the song, and that's this final section. I have some ideas of more processing I'm going to do to these tracks, but right now we're talking about setting up the master channel, and that's what we're going to focus on. I mix into the plugins instead of adding the plugins onto the master track after the fact. That way the mix is glued together with the plugins. If you add them on after the fact, it's different, and that's more like what a mastering engineer might do in the next phase, which I will do later on. But I really like mixing into almost a top-down approach where you start with the processing at the very top of your mix so that you add the individual tracks in after you have the master bus all set up the way you want. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna inactivate all of these tracks, and I'm gonna start with, I may make some adjustments in post to keep things level, and in post I'm talking about in Premiere for this video, so it's not, levels aren't all over the place, but the level of the track went drastically down because I'm bringing up the level incrementally with these plugins. The first one I have is this Pro Q3, which I'm using to roll off the bottom end of the whole mix around 30 Hertz, and just the left and the right. With this one you can select different ways to use the EQ, just the right speaker, just the left speaker, both of them, or just the sides and leaving things to pass through the mid. When you bypass that and say, let's solo up the kick drums and anything low frequency, so our bass. Changes the sound, partially because there's some kind of low-end chorusy stuff on that bass, and you can really hear it in the low frequency. I like to keep things very tight in the center with the low end kick in the snare, or kick in the bass. So I'll often do that. Now, sometimes I might get rid of this or make tweaks, but for the most part, it stays the same. Now I'm going to add this VMR, which is part of the Slate bundle, and this is what I'm using as kind of a console emulation. So if you're new to the game and mixing is a new thing for you, we used to do it on these big giant consoles. Now, I came in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was in Pro Tools all the way. So I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I do know that vintage gear sounds great, and you can add a lot of cool sounds and really saturate the mix and blah, 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 whatever. But I keep this on the Brit 4K, and I'm also using this to get my gains right. You see, I've got all of my faders at this point grouped together to where I can make these adjustments. So I can fine tune that by, I unlink this, because when they're linked, they behave together. I unlink it and I have control of the input, so I'm hitting it just right. I don't want to blow anything up at this point or get anything into the red to where it's distorting and adds problems down the line, because you can't get that back. It's gone if it's distorted. And then I can make adjustments to everything down the line with this output. I keep the drive fairly low, and I like the Brit 4K setting. That's a SSL 4000 console. Some of these other ones, I honestly can't hear the difference all that much the way that I mix into it. Now, I'm sure if I spent a lot of time A/Bing, I'd be able to tell the difference, but I'm using it just to kind of give me some of that saturation, some of that console sound, and then move into everything else. Now, I have this Earth plugin, and I've demonstrated this a few times writing songs, but I haven't engaged, nothing here, and I have the low cut on, and I have my low cut at 50 Hertz. And what I'm doing is I'm using this to add a little bit of a boost. Actually, I usually keep this around 12 dB, so that the cutoff is at 50 hertz, but when I adjust the bandwidth control here, I'm adding a subtle curve to that bottom end, boosting those lows. I know that I'm going to boost low end, and I'm going to boost the high end, and I'm going to cut low mids. I'm going to have that smiley face sound to my music. Still flat for the most part, but it's going to be hyped in that way. So what I'm doing here on my master track is I'm doing that hyping process so that I don't have to do it on every single track. If I know I want it in the end, I'm going to add it here, so I only have to do it once. Now moving on to this air EQ, I'm just boosting the top end with this air setting. I assume that's in like the 12K range. It's just opening up the top end and adding life to the cymbals and the top of the snare. It's actually not that subtle. Now we go to even more EQ. This is the Pultec EQ that comes with the UAD bundle. You can see here that I am doing nothing there. I am dipping at 300. That's where you get the mud in the mix. You take too much of it out and it's real thin, but I'll take a little bit out here. I'm also doing that trick where you kind of boost and attenuate around 30 hertz, which is, it seems like it's going against each other, but watch my other video where I talk about that. You're boosting some and the cut is at a different spot, so it actually accentuates the low end and gives kind of a bloom at the bottom. I have another top end boost here at 10K, 2 on this setting, and with a fairly, in the middle bandwidth. Overall, it's adding excitement, and it's also boosting the gain a little bit because of the boost at the bottom and the top. Now, this is a plugin that I could probably go without, but a friend of mine turned me on to it. It's this black box analog design, and I have it just a mixed bus setting, which is just adding some saturation and even more air to the top. So really seems to clear up the low mid. Listen to the snare drum, the top of it with the air setting, and listen to the low mid of the snare. Actually, no, I do like that. Okay. Now we have the Shadow Hills compressor. Now, I bought this a long time ago and paid a lot of money for it. There are other options. I don't know if this is the one that I would do, but I use this, and in fact, I keep this up all the time because I know that as long as I check my basic gain on this plugin and it's okay, I'm not slamming it or it's not too quiet, and then when I'm getting around 1 dB to 2 dBs max of reduction on the discrete side, there's an optical side and a discrete side, and I typically go with the discrete, so you can see that my meter here is on the discrete. So let's look at this. It's a dual mono mode, which means I have to set these controls the same on both sides. And I choose dual mono because it reacts to different things on the left than it does to the right. So if there's something on the left, it's going to kind of control that and hit that different than what's on the right. It's not going to apply the same compression on both sides if it only happens on one side. And to me, that makes the mix sound a little more interesting, moving back left and right. If it's grabbing it down here and there, you hear it a little bit more, and it's a little more uniform. So by doing dual mono, that helps split it out. I'm not really using the optical section, so you don't have to pay much attention to that. I have my ratio very low, and I have my attack time very slow, so it's letting most of the transients through, and a recover time which is very fast. So it's not doing a whole lot, but here it is in and out. Now if I push everything, let's do it from here. You can see I'm hitting the optical more when I do that, but that's something I would never do, right? Let's leave this up. I had to research this before making this video so I get this all right, but the nickel setting, these are different transformer settings and they do different things. But the nickel setting is going to add even more of an open top end. So that's what I have it set to. I think with this middle setting, you're getting a little bit more of a vintage vibe. Lots of controls on this thing. I very seldom manipulate any of them because they're so basic and they're so like not really affecting the sound a tremendous amount. If the attack was faster and if I really wanted to grab those transients, then that would be more noticeable, or I could slow down the recovery time. But really, I'm just trying to keep things in check a little bit more. So now we move on to the plugin that I'm the least confident about and kind of embarrassed that I use it, even though I shouldn't be because I like it. But it's this Greg Wells MixCentric, and I don't know what it's doing, but I love the way it sounds. I think it's doing a lot. So let me demonstrate. Here's without. There's some EQ in there, there's some compression. It's just giving it that hyped sound. It's doing even more of the work that all these other plugins are doing, but everyone is doing a small amount. Sometimes I'll turn it off. Now recently I've started adding this tape machine at the end. Listen to the top end, yes, but really when you listen to the snare, and especially the bottom end of the snare and the kick, that's where you can hear these subtle changes. I use the 15 hips because it seems to help the low end more than I'd like. Again, this is something that I haven't always used, but really the more that you push it, the more that it seems to glue the mix together, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. Last plugin that's really doing anything is the Pro-L2, and I have it on this modern style setting, and I'm set to the K12 meter. And so when I'm mixing, I'm trying to get it to where it's in this yellow area. Around plus 4 dB is where it needs to be when I deliver. And just so you know, when I put this, say, on minus 32 dB, it's somewhere in that minus 10 to minus 12 dB range. Fairly medium to fast attack, medium release, and I'm just taking the transients off and boosting the gain up again. Now if I mute all these, it's a lot quieter and it sounds better when it's louder. And so your mind is being tricked in a way, but it's also less muddy, has a stronger, more present bottom end and top end. And now when I move into the rest of the mix, I'm not having to do near as much on each track to get things where I want to go. For metering, I've really started to use this tonal balance control. I don't trust it completely. I mean, I'm not going to make all my decisions based on this, but fine tune the look here. So with that, you can tell that I'm a little closer than it looks like I am over here with this top end. But still, to get things to that modern level, I still got a lot more work to do at the top, even though I've done all that on the master channel. You can go in and choose target audio. You can use your own mixes. So like I found when I was doing my personal album, I found a bunch of albums that kind of sounded similar. I loaded in those target profiles and I was able to just jump back and forth to see if I was in the ballpark. So now is when the hard work and the fun work, sometimes fun, not always fun, it's when it begins. Now I can go through and start looking at each track individually, add effects and all that, but I'm so much farther along than I would be if I was having to do everything on every single track. Disclaimer, if you're just now getting started in mixing, I would suggest perhaps not doing everything that I do. I would keep it as simple as possible because if you don't do it right, you can get your gain structure all out of whack. You can cause far more harm than good. So I would keep it simple, leave lots of headroom, and pass it on to a mastering engineer for the final touches. I used to leave a lot more to the mastering engineer, but unfortunately, I am the mastering engineer most of the time, and that's not ideal, but the situation that I'm in right now, that makes the most sense. Passing it along is not really an option, and I know for many of you it's the same way. And I would find that when I did send it off, a lot would happen with the low end and the top end when it was pushed to these loud levels that music has to be in these days to be competitive, at least most genres. Specifically, the low end is a lot different when it hits a compressor or a limiter, and so I want to know what it sounds like before I send it off. I want to get it to those loud competitive levels. I can do another video in the future about loudness wars. Actually, I don't want to do a video about the loudness wars. I don't want to talk about that ever. Go watch other videos about it. So this is my method. I'd love to hear about yours. Please leave it in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate it if you would do that. And yeah, I really want to find out what you like to do on the master mix, what you found works. If there's something here I'm doing that you think is causing me harm, and if I try something else I can improve my mixes, well, I want to know because I want to make the best mixes possible. Hope this helps. Talk to you soon.